Last week in the Timeless and Timely newsletter edition for paid subscribers, I talked about duty. And related to duty are oaths. Where do oaths come from, and why do we take them? Oaths are serious business, and that's what we'll cover on this episode of Timeless Leadership.
There are certain values and practices that withstand the test of time. As Goethe wrote, "He who cannot draw on 3,000 years is living hand to mouth." Timeless leadership connects the stories and experiences of modern leaders with lessons of the past that we know to be beautiful, useful, or true. Through the swirling maelstrom of change and uncertainty that perpetually threaten progress, our North Stars are character, culture, communication, and other timeless principles. This is where leaders learn. This is Timeless Leadership.
I'm Scott Monty. Welcome back to Timeless Leadership, where we explore things about human nature and leadership that are beautiful, useful, or true. And this episode is about keeping your word. If you don't already, please subscribe to the show on whatever podcast platform you prefer. We're available pretty much everywhere. And please leave me a rating or review there. I'd be in your debt if you did that. You can also find out more about me and what I do at scottmonty.com. That's my website. I regularly go out and speak to groups of people, leaders, their teams, boards of directors, company and industry gatherings, etc. I talk to them about things like building a cohesive culture, operating a crisis, being better communicators, running meetings better, crafting a vision. And I tell stories about my time as an executive at Ford to bring that to life. If there's something that you'd like to explore with me, let's craft a program together. I've got a link to my speaking page in the show notes. There's also a link to that essay on duty, if you'd like to read that as well. And by the way, if there's something that you'd like me to talk about on these shows, email me at timeless@scottmonty.com. I read every email and I take your guidance seriously. So try it out. timeless@scottmonty.com. You know any Cub Scouts or Boy Scouts? I was in the scouting program when I was a kid. I never made it to the Eagle Scout level, though. It takes a real serious commitment to the program. And, I was younger. I had other interests and activities. But I'll bet you know some people who went on to be Eagle Scouts. These are usually young men who have gone on to distinguish themselves some way in later life. And that's because the Eagle Scout degree requires a high level of commitment and performance. It tests their scout spirit and their leadership and their service. Some famous Eagle Scouts that you might have heard of include astronauts like Neil Armstrong and Jim Lovell, CEOs like Gary Rogers from Dreyer's Ice Cream, Howard Lincoln from the Seattle Mariners. You got Kevin Rose, the founder of the tech platform Dig, former and late Secretary of Defense Donald Rumsfeld, multiple United States senators, multiple state governors, and of course President Gerald Ford. When you become a scout, you have to take a scout oath or promise. It goes like this: "On my honor, I will do my best to do my duty to God and my country and to obey the scout law, to help other people at all times, to keep myself physically strong, mentally awake, and morally straight." Now, if you ask me, that's, first of all, it's a great oath, but it's something that could easily go beyond just scouting. That's something that any of us could take. Duty to country and law, helping other people, strength physically, mentally, morally. We should have citizens take an oath like this. And taking an oath means that you are expressing an intention to other people and in front of other people. Of course, you say, I promise or I swear. And when you take an oath, it's not just meant for that moment in time. It's about that intention going into the future. It's about making sure you commit to acting a certain way and doing things in a certain way. Think about the vows that couples take at their wedding. They're pledging something to each other, not just at that moment, but for future years together. We also know that witnesses get sworn in court or in Congress. And where does this concept of oath-taking come from? Well, if you look back in history, the ritual goes back centuries, even millennia. In antiquity, oaths were often demanded of religious and governmental leaders and people in certain professions, like take soldiers in ancient Rome. They had to take oaths. A military oath, it was called the sacramentum, because it directly invoked the Roman gods. And when soldiers took this oath, they swore allegiance to their general or their consul, and later to the emperor. Here in the United States, though, we don't swear allegiance to any one person. At least most of us don't. When drafting the Constitution in 1787, the Founding Fathers rejected some of the legal practices that they were looking at from Great Britain. Now, they used a lot of different influences around the world, but the British parliamentary system was one that they were starting to model our country on, but they rejected the religious test. See, in Great Britain, office holders had to affirm the religious doctrines of the Church of England. But, of course, in the United States, there was no religious restriction. It was about religious liberty. Now, one of the British legal practices that the Founding Fathers did include in the Constitution was the swearing of oaths upon entering federal government service. But these oaths weren't taken to pledge loyalty to a single monarch, but to protect and defend the Constitution. And you hear that in the oath of the office of President of the United States. That oath that goes like this: I do solemnly swear that I will faithfully execute the office of President of the United States and will, to the best of my ability, preserve, protect, and defend the Constitution of the United States. Again, that oath is to the Constitution. We take oaths because they underscore our duties. And I don't mean duties in terms of tasks or responsibilities. I'm talking about an intrinsic behavior, something that's associated with ethics and moral judgment. And there's a whole bunch of duties. There's filial duty, right? Your obligation toward your family. And that's usually driven by gratitude and respect for those who have raised and supported us. There's moral duty, the things that are based on principles rather than legal requirements. Things like honesty and kindness and justice, compassion. These are shaped by our personal values and our conscience. And these are voluntary. Right? We don't have to do these. But they're also subjective. Honesty, kindness, compassion, they may come at different levels from different people. But you know it when it's being levied on you. Of course, we have civic duties as well, things like voting, jury duty, paying taxes, things that are codified, right? And the idea behind a civic duty is that there's a collective responsibility. And we do this because it makes us stronger together. We're committed to building a society together. There's certain professions that require duties. Lawyers, doctors, even teachers, they all have a responsibility toward their clients, their students, their patients. They're shaped by professional codes of ethics. There's altruistic duty. We've got a moral obligation to act in a way that benefits other people, even if it costs you personally. You see altruistic duty expressed through selflessness and empathy, doing things like acts of charity, volunteering, even acts of kindness toward strangers. This is ethically bound, again, not required. And then there's universal duty. I hear this from philosophers, kind of a categorical imperative, meaning there's a duty to act in a certain way that applies to everyone, right? There are certain universal moral principles, like treating others with respect and dignity, regardless of your relationships or the circumstances. And we take oaths, again, to hold ourselves accountable for our behaviors that go beyond maybe legal or social requirements, things that are based on who we are intrinsically as people. Compassion, respect, empathy, virtues that we might hold dear. And these intrinsic values serve as a guide for how we lead other people. They help us define who we are when we show up to other people, and they help us define who we are to ourselves. They guide us in the choices that we make as leaders and as human beings. Please take a moment to rate and review the show on Apple Podcasts and share it around. In doing so, you can help the next generation of leaders on their journey. I really appreciate you taking the time to do this. Our theme music, Timeless Harmony, used with permission, was written by Matthias Leon and performed by the City of Prague Philharmonic Orchestra. I'm Scott Monty. There's so much to learn.